I didn't ever know very much about my parents. Now I wish they were still alive so I could ask them about Ellis Island, how they came, why they came, where they lived when they were here. There's just so much they didn't talk about.
One of the most challenging things is, how do you identify a Basque? What is it that makes somebody Basque? And for centuries, in fact, the Basques identify themselves, Euskaldunak, somebody who has the Basque language, Euskera-duna. So what happens for that as they've gone all around the world, as Basque language becomes less dominant, what features are going to be maintained? And it's really interesting to see here in the Treasure Valley the aspects of culture that have survived and that there's been an initiative to try and maintain versus other parts that may not have survived.
I think there's a pride in being Basque, and so, and it is thought of as being something unique, and maybe people are interested in standing out in some way. And so, I don't know, you can't really say that it's now surnames that identifies everybody, or even, you know, features that someone would say that they're Basque. And even that question of who is Basque? Is it Euskaldunak, the speakers of Euskera? Is it people that only were born in the Basque country? Is it people that feel that they are Basque? And so that question's even somewhat difficult to answer, even in the Basque country today.
One thing I've realized is that being Basque is not one thing. It's a really complex identity. We don't have a country, so being Basque has this really kind of transitional status to it. You kind of pick the things that really matter to you and the things you can embrace, and that's what starts to identify you.
It's important that we don't just place labels on these cultures and these races and these nationalities. It's important to really understand the people and the forces that they live through that shape them into who they are, not just what kind of wine they drink and tapas they make and pinchos.
You speak with young Basques today, all across Boise, all across America. They're really proud of their culture and want to continue and want to further it and want to learn more about it. You know, they want to know more than the stories that their grandparents told them, but make their own.
I think it's important to preserve these stories because once they're gone, they're gone. And we know that there are always points in history where you need to look back and you need to understand where you came from. And the world is becoming so much more homogenized now. There's less and less that seems unique. And if you don't understand the cultures that you come from on a deeper level and you don't pass that on, there's a tremendous amount, I think, that is lost.
So from the founding of the New World, Basques have been leaving to fishing expeditions and to early whaling. So from about the 11th century on, we have evidence of Basques leaving the Basque country. From the 16th century on, well, we know that most of Columbus's crew in the late part of the 15th century was of Basque ancestry, and we know that Basques were critical to the settling and exploration rather and settling of the New World. The Basque to the American West is really a secondary migration. So I think it makes the most sense to think of them, the Basque, as continually leaving, and to South America as being the main point of settlement in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. The movement into the United States is a secondary movement. It really begins with the California gold rush and a secondary migration of those coming from Argentina and coming up the western coast and settling in California to take advantage of opportunities connected with the gold rush. So very few of them really got involved in mining or any extraction of gold. Most of them got involved in complementary industries, and for the Basques, this ended up being about sheep herding primarily, although livestock to some degree, but primarily about sheep.
We continue to run about over 7,000 ewes and about 1,500 ewe lambs in the same basic area, north on the desert of Minidoka, and then in southeast Idaho, in Soda Springs and Lava Hot Springs. A very good, excellent country. We make very nice lambs, big heavy lambs, and we're proud of that. It's kind of been our thing. We're trailing on the same roads I trailed on when I was a kid. I'm 60 years old now, and I helped my dad trail on those roads when I was just a young boy. My dad came from the Pyrenees Mountains that divide Spain and France. At 16 years of age, in April of 1929, he went to Le Havre, France, and there he got on a large ship called Ile-de-France, and they came to New York Harbor, and they got off, and from there they caught the train in New York and went to Chicago and to Denver and to Salt Lake. And then my dad, since he was going to Nevada, he got off west of Wendover in a little bitty siding there called Shafter, and he had employment ready for him in April. They were going to begin lambing. There were a lot of Basque men that were coming to the western United States to herd sheep. Their word was their bond. They had great credit. The old Basques, they could borrow money on their name because the bankers knew that they'd get paid back. We call them in Basque kind of a slang, but the mutilsarras, that means old boys.
Never been in the plane before, you know, and look like mosquitoes. And it's snowing, December 7, it's snowing like ducks and the cats. And every time you go over the mountain and plane wind just whoosh, down again, I said, oh, here I am. This is it.
You might have, you might not camped on there, but you end up all the conversation, you know, you tell your partner everything you know, and before you start saying something, the other guy knows because he's staying there every day talking about the same thing. So that was boring, yes.
When you get up in the middle of the night, you band the sheep started bawling and crying. You get up and there's snowstorms and rains and winds blowing. I mean, it really pumps you up, and you really get excited and hope for the better, and it did. Bunch of sheep, 2 or 3 dogs. I'm gonna like a skinny horse and keep it going.
I started going to sheep camp. I lost my sheep, and I don't know where the camp was, and I'm making rounds, and after hours, I let my horse let him go, and I was thinking the horse was going wrong, but went right straight to the sheep camp. Horses know better than person.
Well, they were our best friends. Horse and the dogs, they were best friends. And maybe 2,000 head of sheep, they were your enemies.
We went to one restaurant, we went to breakfast, you know, and we don't know how to ask, you know, for food or what do we want. So there was a guy in that I can see in the kitchen kicking, you know, and he was cooking eggs, and I just pointed with the finger and said, that's what I want. And that's where we started.
When we come here, we make it $200 a month, and that's a pretty good wages, you know. That's all I get, $200 a month. $6.66 a day.
just you all in yourself. You and a couple dogs, and band of sheep. But it was a job. We came here because it wasn't that great a place in Spain, so.
You know, in the United States, you can see a perfect picture of chain migration, just like with other immigrant groups. And in Idaho, the first Basque that came here came from the Spanish side of the Pyrenees, mostly from the province of Vizcaya. And if you get down to Wyoming and Utah and into Nevada, you'll find more from Navarra, the province of Navarra, still on the Spanish side. And you get into California, and there'll be a larger number of people from the French side of the Pyrenees. We call that Iparralde, from the northern part. And you can't ever say that it's 100%, but they tended to go to those places because people before them from their communities went there. So we do have these areas where there's predominantly people from either the southern side, the Spanish side of the Pyrenees, or the French.
So if you take the Basque region and you flip it on a kind of a western movement of about, I don't know, 90 degrees up to 180 degrees, you end up with kind of the same pattern of the Basque country itself, but a western migration. It kind of lays on the American West in that same sense, in that same pattern. So the northern part of the Basque country, the French part, the French Basque region, you'll see that dominates in California. If you go move up to the Nevada, and if you look at California, Nevada, and Idaho as being the most dominant populations of Basque, then Nevada becomes that kind of Spain-France border where you see a mixture of immigrants from both sides and really from border communities. And then by the time you get to Idaho, it ends up being primarily a Spanish Basque and really a Biscayan Basque.
This big mountain to Italia, it is, and 57 miles to town. Never been that kind of country, but
the little by little, we got adapted to it. First time we went to Snake, it was from Dehor Spring down. We didn't.
6 miles.
Yeah, 6 miles. We didn't know much about it. And we didn't have a decent shoes because men didn't tell us we should have had a boots or something like that. So we were like a little everyday shoes. And down the hill, a steep hillside, and it was quite an experience.
Oh. Okay, I started milking the cows back home when I was 5 years old. You know, and that's the way we learned haul that little bunch of sheep, and we know that how to work this before they came to the United States. But this is such a big country. We never been big country like this. That's this big, oh.
And then after so many days, you have to move the camp to another place. You had to pack all your gear and the boxes or whatever. And you had maybe 5 mules, and we had a camp tender, and they had to load those mules. And they moved from one place to another and established a brand new place to be for another week at least.
You want me to talk to you Basque a little bit? Yeah. Naisu hakin selane berbecheun. Orishe de uskira. That's in Basque. And I ask you how you wanted to talk, you know, the Basque.
Go out to what they call Zumwalt Prairie, and then we'll be on the breaks of the Hells Canyon, and I'm not sure if we'll go down or not. We'll just see what the roads are like. They had to go horseback when they first went to the ranch, and then I think it was 3 years later, maybe 5 years later, they sold the timber so many feet on each side, and Boise Cascade built a road for us to the ranch. So it was the first time.
They built that road in 56.
It was the first, 1956 was the first time we actually had a road to go to the ranch.
Oh no! Sorry? Oh, you're going to break that. I don't know, I can do that with the axe. Good axe?
Well, he's got a good axe.
No, he says it isn't so good.
Oh, well, in that case, we can't do anything.
Yeah, I guess we close now. But this is good place because it's easy to turn around.
Yeah.
I knew I was different because I never spoke English. We spoke Basque at home. All of our herders were Basque. They never really told us that we were Basque. We just knew we were different.
I like to hear the Basque because I'm proud of it to be Basque.
Ba, ja, daar doen we. I see it.
Oh, I see now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. Who were you out?
Are kan je andike puntani shindi segutik.
Unus datos alarus
Are gora datos.
So her husband bought his place, Joe's daddy.
So that's why.
That's why we came the 13th October to Enterprise.
And the rest of it is history. I used to go to listen to the men in the shop and stuff, and they said that God them so and so, and I can learn those in no time. And I couldn't speak English, but I can learn the cuss words.
Coffee, I tell you, it's cold here. We should have a coffee. You didn't? Oh.
No, I didn't drink, so.
Probably over here in the house will be the coffee, I'm sure.
Both of my parents were from the Basque province of Vizcaya. One of the differences between the French and the Spanish Basque is that during the Spanish Civil War, the Basques were persecuted by the Franco regime. And that did not happen in France. The French were never persecuted that way, but during the Spanish Civil War, and my mother was in Spain at that time, she was a young woman in her late 20s when this town she was living in was bombed by the Germans under the direction of Franco. Well, the Germans bombed that city, they flattened it, and many people were killed, many people were injured, and my mother has told stories about that too. They bombed all the houses and buildings, and she said she ran into a tunnel and there were hundreds of people hiding in this tunnel, and she had this feeling she needed to get out of there. And she ran out of there, and a bomb landed on that tunnel and killed all the people in there. And she said it was horrible. You were running, you didn't know where you were going. You would see a dead person here, body parts there. And finally she ended up in a forest a little ways out of the town, and there were hundreds of people hiding in that forest. And she said after they stopped bombing, then they would swoop down and just pick people off with machine guns. And she finally, at daybreak, she left the forest and headed toward another village where she knew family.
They told us if we go to Guernica, they have a place in there where they furnish some food for the people from Guernica, you know. So after they left, I'm the one to pick up the bicycle, go to Guernica, pick up the food in there and bring it home. And that's what we have for meal, you know, for one day, a day.
In the town Jaime was living, in that time, you say Forwa, you know. See, it's only a farm town.
I was going the town, and about, I said maybe 200 or 300 meters from where I was going, the artillery shells start hitting the road. So when I see that, I turned around and I went back home, back to the farm. And my mother says, where's the food? And I said, well, they throw artillery shells in Guernica, so I can't go in there. She said, well, and then we're not going to eat today, huh? And you know, I start thinking, I'm not gonna eat today. I'm not gonna eat today. Gee, I'm not gonna eat today. So I never said nothing to anybody. I just grabbed the bicycle and back to Guernica I went. About 4:30, I don't remember the time anyway, but this plane came up and he threw some bombs. So we ran to the refuge, you know, what we think it was refuge. If it's something hit and there, was gone. But anyway, we ran over there, and then they said, well, he threw the bombs and he went again. So we tried to get out, and there comes another German bombers. So they started bombing Guernica, and they bombed for 3 hours, you know. So we sitting in there just scary. But anyway, after we come out from there, we see the whole town was on fire. So there was fire and there's fire in there. You know, those homes in that time, those houses, was one touch to the other, you know. So if this house get in fire and there was no water, when they bombard, they pump the water for the town. Well, then that fire keeps going and going and going and going, and that's why the whole town went on fire. And then, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody says, we have to go to this town because some friend offering then to take us in because our house was on fire. They offer us if we want to stay with them for, you know. So we went to Murueta, that's 4 kilometers from Guernica. So that's when we spent the night. And the next morning we were thinking and going back to Guernica again to see how things was. And we see the plane, so back to Murueta we went. So we spent 3 or 4 days in there until the Franco troops got in. And then we went to Guernica with the father and look, see if we find anything where we used to live, and we can't find nothing in there. It was all in the ground.
Civil war says is a really terrible thing because brothers against brothers you fight, but Guernica was that kind of, it's not supposed to happen, those things anyway. Happen, yeah. It was so terrible, and we see now going to those places when you don't know nobody, and then send it over there, our beautiful children. And I had to handle those things. It really made me sad. Yeah.
So I know her before I came to the United States. So we met, you know, and we talked to each other, and finally we decided to get together. And I said to her, you know, you want to come to the United States? And she know was, I said, well, that's the only way I'm going to get married. You're going to have to come to the United States with me.
And that was the longest trip to New York I ever had in my life. Anyway. So I was so sick because we had those air pockets, you know. Oh my goodness, I was sick. So when we came to New York, we came to 82 Bank Street to Valentin Aguirre, who was a famous Basque. Everybody came there. He had the agency, he had the bank, he had the restaurant, he had the hotel, he had everything. And we came there, we stayed there 5 days. And I told him, I don't want to fly anymore. I would get too sick. So we got he put us on a train. I knew United States was big, but I never realized it was that big. We were there 3 days and 4 nights, and finally made it to Bakersfield. My aunt was there with her daughter to pick us up. I think we help each other, we're close, I don't know, it's a different feeling. I think all of us, you know, when we came, we all needed help. My aunt helped me or thing, and then when the others came, I was one of the first one. I always tried to help. I couldn't financially, but show them how to shop, teach them the Constitution, believe it or not. I had it at night here, Peranzola, all those, we learned the Constitution. In fact, one of them, I think it was Ben. I was teaching it when we only had 21 amendments. And I think Ben came one day and told me, you know, Mai, I think we have a 22nd amendment. And I said, not that I know of. And he said, yeah. But you know, I got it in the news, or I don't know how he told me. It was the president could be reelected only once. And he was right. I checked it out, and there it was, a new amendment, the 22nd.
Oh, the boarding houses were incredibly important to the Basque people here in the United States, and particularly to all those people who came over in the sheep herding program. Most of them didn't speak English. Many of them didn't have relatives here, and so a lot of these boarding houses would be built around the railroads. Shoshone in particular was quite a railroad hub out here. Herders would get off the trains and have a place to stay where people spoke their language, and that would sort of give them tips about what they needed to know or where they could go to get clothes, or just little things where they could send mail from, or things that they would have no way of knowing, and to have food that they were used to eating, and music that they were used to listening to, and camaraderie and people who spoke their language. It was just an incredible comfort to them.
Well, the boarding houses, that's where when they first came to America, like when I work in Noriega, the shepherders would come there. And like in 49, 50, 51, 52, 14, 15 of them come in at one time, to go shepherders. Then the sheepmen would come and pick up theirs, It was unbelievable. And Grace would feed them, and she was the most wonderful woman you ever want to meet. Grace Elizalde, yeah, she was the greatest. She was my everything. She taught me so much when I worked there, The shepherders would come in and she feed them, never ask for any money, and she say, later when you make money, you're gonna pay me back, and then the sheepman, of course, would always tell her, or we'll pay you or something.
The Noriega Hotel was originally built as a boarding house.
My grandparents took over the hotel in 1931.
They come from the Basque area, and they came over around the turn of the century. We've been here for a long time, and we've taken on not only the Basque culture, but the American culture as well. We still run it exactly like it was run in 1893. We still have boarders. They eat 3 meals a day here.
Perfect bachelor place.
The recipes have definitely stayed the same.
This is beef tongue. Because they say, oh, cow tongue. But then they start eating and they love it. And especially kids love it, huh?
Bernadette, our waitress who's been with us for 47 years, she makes sure that the recipes don't change. Noriega's is the only Basque restaurant that still has family-style seating. Everybody comes in at one time at 7 o'clock for dinner and sits down together.
You sit with everybody else. Everyone comes in at the same time. Everybody eats the same thing. It's a lot of food. You'll have the soup, salad, beans, bread, salsa, pickled tongue, cottage cheese. We have either lamb stew, beef stew, or oxtail stew. You get spaghetti, a hot vegetable, then French fries, and the main meat entree. That's it.
My favorite thing is the skating. It's kind of cool because everybody's here in one place.
It's the heart of the Basque community.
I've been coming here since I was a little kid.
We have many family members that have been coming for generations. I would say probably 75% are regulars.
My grandmother came here from the Basque country. She left Ellis Island with a note on her coat saying Noriega Hotel, Bakersfield, California.
We're so close with the Basque community and the food and the way things are done. I think that's probably why we're a classic.
My father came to this country originally, again, because of military conscription and economic opportunity. He was the youngest of a family of 7, and he had, again, no interest in anything that the Spanish military was fighting for, certainly did not want to be engaged in another of their civil wars. One of the things about his connection and getting here that I've always marveled at and never really understood how it must have worked is that my uncle and his partner were here running sheep. My father was an infant when my uncle came here, and so he never knew him. And somehow through their correspondence, in an exchange of letters that must have taken months to get back and forth, Leon sent for my dad, provided him money, told him that he would meet him in Ogden, Utah at a certain month. And my dad took the money, went to France, got a passport, took the ship, came to Ellis Island, somehow found his way from a train across the states to Utah, found Ogden, and sat in the boarding house until Sam and Leon came back across the desert to go to Soda Springs in the spring, and they miraculously met one another at this boarding house in a period of time that, of course, must have taken years from the start to the end of that. Now the communication with the cousins is in the same way that it would be with anyone else. They have Gmail addresses, and they're fluent in English. They write in a way that is again so casual and familial and rapid in exchanging photographs. One of the things that my brother found was a tree where Jesus, my cousin, had written his name 50 years ago. He took a picture of it on his phone, sent it to me, I forwarded it to them, and in the course of 2 days they had a picture of Jesus's name that had been grown large on this aspen tree in Idaho. And so that difference in communication and ability to connect is just so vastly different from what my father experienced that it's really mind-boggling.
The immigrant group came with really looking for opportunity. It's a classic immigrant story in that sense. They got pushed out of their homeland primarily for economic reasons. They settled 7,000 miles away in the American West. One of the few real kind of remnants that we have is these trees. So these trees represent an artifact, if you will, a way for us to explain or to identify which herder was here, when they were here. They become a kind of a phone book, a kind of a way for us to really to identify who was working in the hills at that time. This is a small snippet of that story that along with South America, that along with Basque and other portions of the diaspora, I think capture a part of that.
I'm proud to be a Basque. It's something that you don't learn. I mean, you have it within you, you know. I always said I was Basque, and when talking every day to new clients in my business, they ask me where I was from, and I tell them I'm from the region of Euskadi in the northern side of Spain. That was Basque, and they asked me if I speak a native language. I said, yes, I do. I always be proud, I am proud to be a Basque. Not only a Basque, but I feel it and I live like a Basque.
So it's one thing to go to a festival and play or to dance or to do it for 5 years or 10 years or maybe even 20 years. But to do it for 60 years, I think represents an effort that it's truly heroic. Well, Jimmy Gesaro personally is just one of my heroes. I think just as a human being, I don't think they came any better or come any better than Jimmy Gesaro. In that I think he was so generous with his time, just one of the kindest individuals I've ever met. He represents, he himself, the effort he made, represents key individuals who have come and taken great initiative, a great love, a love of the culture, a love of wanting to pass it on to others. And for me, Jimmy embodies that, in that for the better part, for over 60 years, he became the lead musician of a band that played all around the American West, that played in the Basque Country as well. He played for countless dancing groups, a number of them here in the Treasure Valley, but played for dances and for groups all around. And I think was really at the forefront of preserving Basque American music and that expression of the culture. So besides just being one of the kindest humans that you'd ever meet, Jimmy's role in Basque, he's an icon of Basque in the American West for the longevity and the love that he had of music and of spreading that music for others.
I love Jimmy. Jimmy lived his whole life for the Basque community. I mean, to bring music to people. Papa died when, you know, he was 70 years old. And Papa was dying, and I had run to the store to pick something up, and I was going back home, and there was a car in the driveway, and I didn't know whose it was. Our home was a very sad place to be at that time. It had been about 6 weeks, and we knew Papa was dying. And I opened my car door, and I was like, whose car is in the driveway? And it was, and I could hear Jimmy's accordion playing and Papa's tambourine. And so I went up, and I hadn't heard that for a long time, for weeks, because my dad was so sick. And so I went running into the living room, and that precious Jimmy was there, and he had brought a young man, Pat Flaherty, and he's like, Domingo, before you die, you have to teach him how to play the tambourine before you die. So they were trying, and it was just, I mean, that was so Jimmy. I mean, he wanted that music to go on forever. And he wanted to bring, he felt like the way he brought the Basque culture to people was through his music.
He played my parents' wedding in the early 1970s. He was good friends with my amuma, my grandmother, and my great aunt, and I'd heard Jimmy Gisaro, Jimmy Gisaro, Jimmy Gisaro. And I always had wanted to meet him. I wanted to hear his music, and I never did. So I moved to Boise. I meet these guys, and I find out, oh, wait a minute. Dan's father, Domingo and Sadegi, was best friends with Jimmy, played in their band together. Dan, when his father passed away, Dan started playing in the band together. Found out all these connections that our grandparents and parents had 35, 40, 50, 60 years ago. All of a sudden, we're just kind of there together. And to me, I remember seeing these pictures of Jimmy Gisaro's band at my parents' wedding, and there was this drum set. I'm a drummer, I'm a dork, I'm a gearhead. Look at this drum set. It's a white marine pearl 1950s Ludwig. And I find out that Dan's dad was the drummer. I'm hanging with Dan. I go, Dan, do you still have that drum set? He goes, yeah. I go, can I play it? I mean, could I clean it up? He goes, yeah, why would you want to do that? I go, because it's Jimmy, it's the drum set. It's the Basque drum set that's played like 1,000 gigs. And so I took it, cleaned it up, put heads on it. That's the drum set we practice on. I bring my mother here for our first gig where she's seen us. I go, Mom. You do this to me. I came to Boise, my father passed away. That's why I moved here. So, my parents' wedding, jeez Louise, give me this beer. I bring my mother downstairs. I say, Mom, that's the drum set. I'm playing. It's a big deal. This band, as dumb as we are, as many times as I've made them play the chicken dance in Caldwell, is a big damn deal, for whatever reason.
I agree, and I don't think we're so much something new. We're a continuation of what's the groundwork that's been laid, and we're just the next evolution of it, and there'll be something coming along when we're not playing anymore. I hope that's not soon.
Yeah, okay.
That relationship between Jimmy and me, and Jimmy and the family to a large extent, and still to this day, kind of turned into a curiosity, if you will, that just wanted to know more and more and more, whether it was about the Basque music or about the specific song I was playing about, or why is this important? Why should we learn this? The first song that I completed both on the right and the left hand, and it's a pretty famous one that they do in Pamplona for the running of the bulls. People have different names for it. Some people call it Celedon, other people call it Aturalauco. Take your pick. This is the first song I learned from Jimmy. I think that relationship that I had with Jimmy, continual asking of questions and wanting to know more, is something that I know I will take with me wherever I go and be applicable not only to music but other areas of life as well.
That means a lot. Every time I hear an accordion and dances and all that, it brings me some happiness. I like to watch them, you know, and many times I participate. I still like to dance and do things.
And so we bring them back to our culture a lot. Even a lot of the American kids, they love to learn how to dance and they love to come to our festivals and you know, we become really good friends.
I really think that we have made lots of friends with Ice Block, people that maybe we never would have met or at least never made a connection with. So
we always grew up, you know, with Basque people coming in and then, you know, festivals going to when we were little, and then Mom taught Basque dancing.
When I was putting on this party for the 100th celebration, you know, our actual 100th celebration is on December 17th, but we wanted to tie it in with the Basque festivals, and I wanted to have a Basque band because some people were saying, oh, you need to bring this kind of country band, this band. I said, no, not the Star. I said, we're going to have a Basque band at the Star. It was a great street dance for Elko, and the whole community turned out. You know, I saw people here, you know, older people that had been coming to the Star for 50 years, to the young. It's Betty Gaste, and Betty Gaste means forever young, and that is what I believe in.
Berrogeietan zazpi urte, aurten bestak du betetzen.
I start Bersolari. My grandpa is a Bersolari in old days. So when I 9, 10 years old, I hear my grandpa singing, and then I say, well, I think I can do that too. So I start singing a little bit, and then later when I grow like 15, 16 years old, every town, somebody after eat good dinner, everybody started singing something, you know. It's pretty hard, it's not easy. But you need, this is common, natural in your mind, and then you got to practice. There's anybody can do that. That's pretty hard. A lot of people start, you can't do, no way to go. So more you practice, it's better, you know. I want to teach, but the only problem is we live a long ways. How about somebody want to come to Reno, Nevada to teach? It's long ways. Or Chino, California, or San Francisco is far ways.
It's almost a choice these days that you practice your culture.
In Boise, we're very fortunate because we have a large number of people. And so that helps with programs. You have a lot of people to participate, and it also helps with visibility in the community. So I think that the numbers and just the way Boise is, very welcoming, that's provided a great environment for Basque culture to thrive. You know, 1 generation ago or 2 generations ago, they probably wouldn't have thought that Basque culture was going to be as strong as it is today.
Basque culture is alive and well in Boise because people for at least 3 generations have made it a priority. I can't tell you specifically that the Basque put me over the hump, but I think that's a definite element of that. So I mean, my success may be very specifically due to the Basque.
When we would eat at my Grandma Eppie's house, and really in my own home, always, meals were a big deal. And everybody came and sat together and conversed, and one day we were saying, what are we gonna name the restaurant, because we're opening. What are we gonna put on the menu? And Gina was the one that she said, well, I think we have to name it after Grandma, because everything that we're looking at so many of her recipes and so much of what we got to experience because of her. So I think we should name it after her. And so that's how it came about, I guess. And then the doors opened, and there's been over 12 years later.
So Moose is a traditional Basque card game. It's also played by Spanish, and it's actually played internationally, but it's a traditional Basque card game played with the Spanish card set of 40 cards. And as several people here would tell you, it's a game of bluffing and lying. Basically poker-esque. You play 4 rounds in a hand, first betting on who has the best large cards, the best small cards, the best pairs, and the best game. And it's just really a lot of fun. It's uniquely Basque. I mean, you bluff, you bet. It's a matter of pride, so we always have a tournament, whether it's for the national NABO tournament or just for fun. As someone who's tried to teach the game in English, I just cannot play it in English. So when you play, you either play in Basque or Spanish or mixed. So all the counting, the betting, everything is in Basque. So it's like telling a Basque joke and then trying to translate it into English, and it's just not as funny.
After our Basque Christmas, our Basque Easter, everyone comes here. After all our Basque festivals, everyone's here. I've been dancing since I was about 10. Now I've taken over the adult group. I teach it now. We dance around a wine glass. The specific dance that's danced around the wine glass is called godelette. We dance around the glass, jump on top of it, and hope not to break the glass and not to spill the wine. It meant for a good harvest that year. We've traveled a lot in the last couple years. We went over to Boise. We go to San Francisco, Fresno, Vegas, and everything's a little different. If you're, building a Basque cultural center, it follows suit to have kind of a handball or pala court.
Without our youth, we are not a culture. We need our youth to identify themselves as Basque and want to make the Basque culture part of their everyday existence. If they don't, the culture becomes one of memories, and it's not what we want. It's the Basque culture, just like the Basque country for the youth, needs to stay relevant and current. And memories are very important. Without your memories, without your experiences, without your stories, you aren't who you are. But it also needs to move forward. So we have to be a bridge between the past and the future and make sure that everybody's kind of on board and along with us.
We try to teach our kids the most basic things that make us proud to be Basque, which is the work ethic, which is the friendliness, which is the helping of other people that are in need. My father impressed upon me many, many times his gratefulness for the United States of America, his ability to cast a vote, for his ability to start a company like he did. That can't be done everywhere in the world, and it's important that we pass that understanding on to our kids. We are working hard at least to carry on the tradition of the sheep business with our kids. Sophie Rose is our animal lover, and Bo Jean keeps all the machinery working and loves to drive, but both of them are very caring with the animals and very involved in the business.
When I was a kid, it was mostly dance and some singing, but now it's the music and the language especially that's starting to grow. Modern influences are much more a part of what makes a Basque identity in Spain. There's, punk rock is a huge part of modern Basque identity and things like that. The Guggenheim, these modern expressions of what it is to be Basque are important there. And to some degree, I don't mean this in a negative way, but the culture in the United States is connected to what the Basque sheep herders brought with them and what they knew. And it's sort of locked in that past a little bit. While in the Basque country, it's just kept going like everywhere else. It's got modern forms of expression. So that's the main difference I see.
Well, to preserve Basque culture, I participate in as many of the events as I can that are here locally. I try to listen to the stories that our amuma tells us. Yeah, the biggest one was when our amuma would tell us how it was for her when she was our age. It's hard for us to imagine not being so proud of who we are. She wanted to acculturate, to become as much like a U.S. citizen as she could. Having not being able to speak the language in public with her friends, or even being proud of her name like I was. I think that's been so impactful for all of us.
Euskera is an emotional component for me. We're emotionally connected to it. It's our grandmother's first language, and learning to speak it was a way to reconnect with our culture and to really find that deep connection to our family's history. I think it's a way to hold on to the culture. I think that language is a really important aspect of a culture because it's how you tell stories, it's how you communicate, and I think that by losing that, you're going to lose a pretty imperative part of a heritage, and so I think that's why people should maintain the language and learn as much as they can of it. I think we all share that desire to, take that, learn from it, and teach it to our future generations so that it can continue.
When you grow up in a family where you hear stories about your grandfather came to this country and he herded sheep for years by himself, and he went back and he came again and he herded. And when your own parents are people who work hard and who are determined to give you a better life, and you yourself, you get that, and it's passed on to you, and you have that desire to go on to do bigger and better, because it's not just for you, it's not just for your family, but there is that pride of your community and that desire to do this for yourself so that you can give back to your community and raise them up even more. And I think this Basque bloc, this Basque community in Idaho is a testament to the determination of the Basque people to preserve their culture, preserve who they are. And I think you can look all through Basque history to see that stubbornness, that unwillingness to let anyone push them aside.
All the generations that I've met, from my generation to the older generation, very proud that they're Basque. There's a significant amount of pride, and I think our greatest gift or our greatest success in coming to America and all the places that Basques have gone is that we've integrated well and yet maintained our culture. And I think we've done it in such a way that, you're going to be hearing about Basque people for a very long time. We're not a group that will fade away into history. We'll be Basque, but we might be in the US, or we'll be Basque, but we might be in Russia, but we'll still be Basque. We'll still be playing moose and You know, the drinks might change a little bit and some of the food might change, but we'll still be Basque.
Not all Basques were sheep herders, but my, in fact, my root beer, you can't do it.